Resting to fix shin pain is like turning the bath off because it's about to overflow. You've stopped the problem, but that's not going to fix it. In this video, I'll show you why rest alone isn't going to fix your shin pain and what actually needs to change to have good results long term. Often what happens is rest reduces pain because the load has dropped, and that gives you some relief from symptoms, but it's not necessarily solved the problem. But because pain's settled, a runner typically assumes that the tissue's healed, but nothing's changed about the cause. Pain going down doesn't mean that the symptom's fixed. It just means it's not being stressed right now. A typical timeline might look something like this. You go for a run, you feel some pain. So then you rest, the pain reduces, so you run again, but then the pain returns. Shin pain is typically bone and tissue reacting to repeated load that they can't tolerate. It's not normally damage, it's just a bit of a capacity mismatch. To strengthen bone, we need to load it, but load adapts slower than other tissues. Tendons and muscles are similar. They need to be loaded to get stronger, but they recover a lot quicker, so they can cope with repeated load over and over again, where bone needs a little bit longer to recover between sessions. And pain often appears when recovery is less than demand. I see it weekly. Runners get injured, they rest, they go back to running, and then they break down again. So there's 4 different things that we need to address when it comes to fixing shin pain long term. The first one being training load. That could be any sudden increases. It could be repeated hill sessions, high intensity work like tempos or interval sessions, training on hard surfaces like track or trail running in the summer, and weekly monotony. So repeated sessions over and over again rather than mixing it up, varying things and testing different tissues at different times. Your shins don't know what rest days are. They only know cumulative load. Number 2 is running mechanics, and this one's often missed. Things like overstriding can cause extra forces through tissues that aren't built to cope with that extra force. That can lead to excessive braking forces. If you're overstriding and your knees are often locked and your heel landing, then that means that different parts of the body have got to absorb force, which if everything was a bit more balanced, they wouldn't have to be stressed as much. Things like poor ankle mobility, again, if the ankle isn't absorbing force like it should do, if it was optimized, then that has a knock-on effect because that force has to be absorbed somewhere. And if it's not being absorbed where it should be absorbed, somewhere else is going to take the brunt. And that's often your shins. But it's not about perfect form. There are plenty of runners out there with poor form that don't get injured. It's just about avoiding repeated stress in the same spots. Following on from that is number 3, tissue capacity. Things like, are your calves strong enough? Especially your soleus, which is the muscle at the bottom half of your calf, just above your Achilles. Your tibialis posterior and anterior, which do a lot of the work when you're running. And the bone itself. The bone does need stressing. It definitely doesn't need avoiding, but it just needs to be progressively overloaded at a safe and steady manner. Bones don't rest stronger. They just need smart loading. And finally, number 4, which again gets overlooked quite a lot, which is recovery and lifestyle factors. Things like sleep. Is your body getting enough sleep so that it can repair itself at complete rest? Energy availability, which is, are you fully recovered from your last run and ready to do the next run? Have you refueled enough? Have you got enough energy? Have you had enough food before to give you the calories that help you train at an intensity that you need? Even things like sudden body weight changes. So we all indulge a little bit too much over Christmas. If you've put a lot of weight on and you've not done any training through that period, you're going from a lighter runner with a bit of rest, so you'll lose a bit of conditioning, to a heavier runner. And those tissues don't know that. They don't understand what Christmas means. So things like that also play a part. Or you might have had a bit of a break from running and you've put some weight on over that time, or you've been to the gym, you put a bit of muscle on and you're heavier. Your tissues need to adapt to that increased weight because they're the ones that are going to absorb the force as you're running. But again, they don't know why everything's heavier. And if you've not conditioned them to take that force, then they're going to break down. And even stress outside running. Are you going through a new job? Are you moving house? Have you just had a baby? Things like that all play a part. If recovery is the limiting factor, rest sounds like the solution, but it's actually the warning. So we know that rest isn't going to solve the problem, but equally what isn't going to solve the problem is generic rehab. So you might ask ChatGPT for a rehab program to fix your shin splint. You might Google some exercises and get a printout or a PDF guide, or you might go to the doctor who refers you to the physio, gives you a pre-made PDF guide. That's not going to solve the problem because they're not specifically designed for your causes. So if an increased training load is causing your problem, the printout might by chance help, but it also might not. Generic rehab just has no context of your specific situation and your training load. They also typically don't have any progression. So you get exercises, you get told to do 3 sets of 12 every day, and that's it. What do you do when those sets of 12 become too easy? Or even if they're too hard to start with, where do you go from there? You don't know, and that's the problem with generic rehab. Two runners can have exactly the same pain, but they might need completely different fixes, and that's because everybody's situation is different, and there's a number of different causes which can lead to shin splints. If you want clarity, I've got a 2-minute diagnostic quiz. It looks at training, strength, and symptoms to pinpoint exactly what's causing your shin pain. You'll then be able to see the likely cause, be able to access some next step guidance, and just avoid time just sitting around watching telly because you think that's going to solve your problem. And as with all shin pain, there's always a slight chance that it might be something more severe. If the pain's local, sharp or worsening, and you get no rest even at night when you're laid in bed doing nothing, then that could be a sign that it's something more serious, like a stress fracture. I made a video breaking down the difference between shin splints and stress fractures, and you can watch that here.